Hey there! I'm hiking the southern half of the Appalachian Trail in spring 2019. Now I'm pushing 60, and if you are too, or not, and have been thinking that you'd like to do some long-distance backpacking but aren't sure that you're up for it, I'd like to invite you to come along on my journey with me. We'll learn the experiential way and tackle this challenge together. Are you ready? Let's go! Hi, this is the only pre-trip video that I'll be making, and in this one I'll share with you the things that I started doing several months in advance to prepare for my AT trip. If you're an experienced hiker, there won't be anything new for you to learn here. But if you are a beginning or wannabe long-distance hiker, I'm hoping there'll be at least something that will be helpful for you here. The very first thing I started doing is exactly what you're doing right now. And that was to watch YouTube videos of vloggers who were already out on the AT and especially hiking the sections that I wanted to hike. In 2017, videos with Early Riser and Dixie were really helpful, as well as those with Redbeard and Bigfoot. And then in 2018, I followed Evan E. Wolf and Liz and the Crawfords, and also some of Old Ladies Hiking North with Pacifier while she was out on the trail. The main things I did to start planning fell into 4 categories. Gear, putting together a gear list so I would have an idea of what kinds of things I still needed to buy. Itinerary, planning that out so I could make some travel plans and get an idea of how much time I was going to need to be out there to reach the goals that I wanted to reach. Food, so I would have an idea of the kinds of meals I wanted to eat out there and what things I would want to be cooking. And also training, what to do to start getting my body in shape, and especially my feet to be blister-free when it actually came time to get out on the trail. So I'll talk about things in the same order: gear list, itinerary, meals, and training. One of the early things I did in my planning was to put together my gear list. I already had one from previous backpacking trips, and I honed this one specific for the A-Trail trip. I've got categories of kitchen, clothes, miscellaneous. You can see where I started adding in notes as I was learning things along the way. Here I'm considering whether to hang a bear bag or take a bear vault, and what I was learning about the BV500 with some notes about why that might be a good choice. Which is what I ended up going with. I have hung bear bags before. Sometimes those are a real pain late at night when it's hard to find a good branch. So I'm going to give the bear vault a try and see what I think about that. That'll be a first for me. Over here I've got some notes about whether to take my hiking boots or trail shoes. And I decided, there's arguments on both sides of this, and I decided I'm going to wear my hiking boots that I already have until they wear out, and then I'll consider switching over to trail shoes. Here I've got some note about the tent I ended up buying, a Z-Pack duplex, to make a note to myself not to ditch the stuff sack, because then I will get holes in my tent if it's not protected in the stuff sack. So this was an early thing to do so that I would know what I needed to research, what I needed to buy, and this was an important first step that I think really got me visualizing the trip and helping to figure out my budget and what kinds of things I was going to need to plan for. This is a pretty popular AT guide by David A. Miller. He's been putting this together for several years and updating it every year. This is the 2018, which is what all that was available when I was starting my planning. The 2019 is now out, but I decided not to buy the updated version. I also tore the book in half so that I'm only taking along the pages of the part of the trail that I'm hiking to save weight there. This is such a great guide. He's got every single thing you're going to see along the way. Landmarks, shelters with the mileage both going north and south right there to the left. Look at the elevation. This is cool. He's got the elevation correlated with directly what's on that page at that point that he's talking about. Over to the right, he's got some keys marked with the water drops means there's a water source available, and he's noted anything else, like where there's a shelter, different kinds of things. If you come to a city, here's Robbinsville, North Carolina. He's put some notes in there about things to know about, and also I'll zoom in here. He's got a mini map of the town, shows you where the post office is, Walgreens, the dollar store, some of the things you might need to know about. He also has some icons here when you are in bear country to beware. A hard shell bear canister is required for hikers overnighting between Jared Gap and Neil Gap. Good to know, so I can plan either for that or around that. That's the AT guide. I found this app early on called the AT Notebook. It has a map, and I can zoom in on things. But what I used was this guide. If I click on Georgia, for example, to start, it shows me every shelter along the way and the mileage in between. And I used this to start penciling out a general itinerary based on how many miles a day I wanted to go. I wanted to start out slow and build up my mileage along the way. There's actually a service you can use here to locate stuff. I haven't used that since I'm still back home. I haven't left for the trail yet, but this helped me build my itinerary. So eventually I got to the point where I was able to put together a detailed itinerary like this. And that may be more than what's needed, but this was based off from one that I found on the internet from someone else. And I just kind of used theirs as a template and then filled in my own information. I've got the day of the month, I've got what day of my hike, I've got some details in blue about resupply, I've got my daily mileage that I only did for a page or two and then forgot that because I knew that that would be too difficult to be exact. And then I also put in highlight here the biggest cities that I was going to be nearby, and also put in some mail drops of where I was going to get things mailed to myself. So for meals, eventually I got to the point where I started writing down the food I was going to take with me and the kinds of meals I was going to plan. Now keep in mind this is an early list, so some of these things I've taken and some of these things got scratched off my list. But I had things divided into breakfast, trail foods, dinners. It gave me an idea of the kinds of things to start shopping for and thinking about. And also notice I wrote a note to myself to actually use a kitchen scale to weigh things. Yes, things did get down to where I was worried about ounces, and that was helpful for me to know how much 4 or 5 or 6 day stash of food was going to weigh. All right, folks, that's about it. That's what I did to get ready for my trip. Watched a lot of YouTube videos, put together a gear list, and then researched and purchased the gear I needed. Put together an itinerary, and so got my travel plans together. Got my meal list together, and then went ahead and purchased food eventually, including food for some drop boxes. I'm going to be mailing myself 4 different boxes. Other than that, I'll be buying my own food along the trail. And then finally training, which was perpetual and consistent throughout the many months leading up to my trip. Right now, it's actually time to go. I'm packed and I'm ready. I'm pushing 60, and I'll see you on the trail.